Imagine living in a neighborhood where the people in charge think they're above the law. It all started out small, at least that's how it looked from the outside. A petty rule here, a nasty note there. The HOA board had always been a bit of a power-hungry club, but when Karen got herself elected as president, things escalated fast. She had that kind of energy where she wasn't satisfied until everyone in the neighborhood bent to her will. No porch light too bright, no lawn too green, no car parked too close to the sidewalk without her personally making it a problem. For months, I tried to ignore her antics. I figured let her have her little crusade, but she just wouldn't let up. My Jeep, parked right outside my own house, mind you, became her obsession. She claimed it was an eyesore. She claimed it violated aesthetic standards for the neighborhood. She even claimed it was abandoned, which was insane because I drove it daily. But here's where it gets interesting. This wasn't just any Jeep. This wasn't a college kid's toy or some rusty off-road hobby project. This Jeep was part of a police task force operation. Yeah, you heard me right. It was fitted with undercover surveillance equipment, licensed and registered in a way that made sure it blended in. It looked ordinary, but it was anything but ordinary. And Karen, she had no idea. The first real confrontation came when she started sending violation letters. Every week, another envelope taped to my door. Remove unauthorized vehicle. Failure to comply will result in fines. Non-compliance may result in towing. I'd laugh at first, then I'd call my liaison in the department and they'd just say, document everything. Don't engage unless you have to. But Karen escalated faster than anyone expected. She started sneaking around, taking photos at all hours of the night. Once, at 3 a.m., I caught her crouched by the Jeep, snapping pictures with the flash on. When I asked her what in the world she thought she was doing, she hissed, "This doesn't belong here. We're a respectable community. This junk violates our standards." I told her flat out, "This vehicle isn't yours to touch. Walk away now before you cross a line you can't uncross." But Karen? She smirked, like she'd already won. And then the day came when she made her move. I got home from work to find my Jeep, gone, not parked down the street. Not booted, gone, the lock on the chain I'd kept across the driveway. Cut clean through, the security cam footage. Blurry, but you could clearly see Karen directing a tow truck like she was the general of her own little army. She stood there with her arms crossed, pointing, instructing, grinning as my Jeep was hauled away. And that's when the real storm started brewing. Because what she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that by cutting that lock and touching that vehicle, she hadn't just violated HOA bylaws, she'd tampered with police property. The rising action builds here. Neighbors start whispering. Half of them think Karen's finally gone too far. The other half are terrified of crossing her. People come up to me quietly saying, "Hey, I saw what she did." I don't agree with it, but please don't use my name. I don't want trouble. Meanwhile, Karen is strutting around like she just liberated the neighborhood from an invading army. She boasts at the HOA meeting, the Jeep is gone, order is restored. And the board? They clap, they cheer her on like she's some kind of hero. But me? I'm just sitting there smiling. Because I know something Karen doesn't. Every second that Jeep sits in impound, the case against her is stacking higher and higher. She hasn't embarrassed me, she's incriminated herself, and the fuse is officially lit. The call came in 2 days later, and it was exactly the one I'd been waiting for. "We're moving," my liaison said. "We've got everything we need. Meet us at the HOA meeting tonight." It's a packed clubhouse. Karen up at the front like a queen addressing her subjects. She's got the smug smile plastered across her face, bragging about new rules she's planning to implement. Lawn heights, paint colors, parking restrictions, the whole circus. And then, right as she's mid-sentence about community standards, the doors swing open. 2 plainclothes officers walk in, badges out. The room goes dead silent. "Ma'am," one officer says, stepping forward, "we need to speak with you about a stolen vehicle. A government vehicle." In the weeks that followed, the neighborhood felt like a completely different place. For the first time in years, people walked around without that weight of Karen's watchful eyes. Folks started talking openly again. Neighbors who had been too afraid to speak up were suddenly swapping stories, laughing about all the times she'd harassed them. The board held an emergency meeting. Without Karen, they were scrambling. Some members resigned outright, embarrassed to have cheered her on. Others begged forgiveness, promising they never really agreed with what she was doing. But the damage was done. The HOS reputation was in tatters. And me? I didn't need to say much. The truth spoke for itself. When the story hit the local paper, HOA president arrested for tampering with police vehicle, it spread like wildfire. Karen became infamous overnight. People online dubbed her the HOA Karen who tried to take on the cops. Memes popped up. Late-night talk radio had a field day. Legally, the fallout was brutal for her. Charges included trespassing, destruction of property, interference with law enforcement, and more. Her lawyer tried to spin it, claiming she was just doing her duty as HOA president. But judges don't buy that kind of arrogance. Last I heard, she was facing a plea deal that would strip her of any chance of holding a leadership role again, not just in the HOA, but in any public position. The Jeep, recovered in perfect condition. All equipment intact. The task force gave me a nod of respect for keeping my cool and letting the process play out. Most folks would have blown up, one officer told me. You let her dig her own grave. Smart move. The neighborhood eventually voted to restructure the HOA. New rules were passed, not about lawn heights or paint colors, but about limits to the board's power, transparency, accountability, checks and balances. People finally realized that blind obedience to a power-hungry leader was dangerous. But here's the part that stuck with me most. The impact wasn't just on the HOA. It was personal. Neighbors who once kept their heads down started standing taller. Folks who were afraid of retaliation found their voices again. One guy told me, "I used to dread living here. Now, I feel like this is actually home." And as for Karen, she faded away. No more strutting through the streets, no more nasty letters taped to doors, just silence. A void where her tyranny used to be. Some say she moved out of town. Others say she's still around, but too ashamed to show her face. Either way, her reign was over. Looking back, I realized something important. It's not just about one Jeep or one lock or even one power-drunk president. It's about what happens when people forget that rules are supposed to serve the community, not control it. When authority crosses the line into abuse, it always ends the same way: collapse, disgrace, downfall. So if there's one takeaway from this whole saga, it's this: never underestimate the power of standing your ground. Bullies thrive on fear and silence. The moment you hold the line, the moment you refuse to bow, their power crumbles. And that night, as I watched Karen get walked out in handcuffs, I couldn't help but think, it wasn't just justice for me. It was justice for every neighbor she'd ever intimidated, every voice she'd ever silenced, every ounce of peace she'd ever stolen. That was the real victory. And that's how one cut lock and one stolen Jeep brought down an entire empire of arrogance.